Hello, wrestling friends. I am Joe Caprino with Indiana Matt. Run the Indiana Matt Hoosier Preseason Open. That was just this past weekend, better known as IHPO. And I had some social media posts this week that kind of went a little crazy. And I want to give more details for the event managers, people that run tournaments, give them a little more details of things I have gone through this past week, and just want to make sure that I can go into a little more detail of what I saw from my end, and hopefully as a warning to those that are putting on events and they can be ready for potential loss of revenue, more charges, things like that. I mean, obviously, we want to when you're running an event, you want to make a little bit of money, and you don't want to be surprised by charges or revenue that's not as much as it used to be in the past. So, first off, I will say that my post did garner some attention, and I had a very good conversation with the vice president that is in charge of wrestling at FloWrestling. He found my phone number and gave me a call. I can say I'm not going to mention the guy's name just so he doesn't get dragged through the mud or anything. Had a good conversation with him. I have talked to a couple different people and mentioned his name, and they said, "Hey, the guy's a good guy." It sounds like he is very interested in seeing what my issue was, whether we get some kind of resolve that is in whoever's favor. That is to be found out later. But he was willing to listen, and it was a 45-minute phone call. He took that time out to call me and say, "Hey, what's going on? What's your gripes?" And gave me some insight. Obviously they want to make money. You know, everyone wants, in that area they need to make money, whether whether they're making too much in other in people's minds or not. That's for you guys to decide. But same at the end of the day, if they might need to increase costs, for to pay people, to pay for servers, pay for this and that, they have costs, they have to make money. So it was a good conversation, and he understood where I was coming from, and has been around the sport of wrestling for a while, so he knows the flow, um, the reputation they have, and knows that I think that's one of his biggest probably goals. I can just tell just from giving me a call, he wants to help that image in a positive manner. So it is what it is there. But I just wanted to say that he did reach out, and that does show me, at least shows me that he wants to get stuff in a in a better direction, and wants to know why someone like myself is upset, and made some uh, pretty big social media posts. So first thing I want to tell people, I just throw that up there on the screen, that if you're running a tournament, I got this email in February, I believe, is when it came out, February or March. I read it, and I didn't process it, and I was about ready to do my pre-registration, and kind of was talking to my guy that does the track wrestling, and he kind of brought that up, and this is the main reason why we did our registration through Indiana Map. So previously, when you did a pre-registration, you only got charged for the people that actually paid there. So if you did a pre-registration and no one paid, and they paid at the door, you weren't charged a single thing. Now that's going to change. Also, it used to be a 2.89%, I believe, was a processing fee plus 35 cents per person that pays. Um, I mean, it's pretty standard if you're into that kind of space of what a PayPal or a Stripe or a Square charges. So, um, so that is what that is. So it changed from that 3.9 or 2.89% to 3.15% and $2. Also, if you collect payments on site and use the pre-registration, you're going to be charged an extra $2. So that is, and then there's obviously you can read the other one that's for more like a camps and such. So that went up from basically 35 cents to $1.65. If a tournament has 300 wrestlers at $20, that's a $500 difference. Our local tournaments, that's a perfect thing that they use for, they use local tournaments to build some money for mats, singlets, other stuff at your school. That's a $500 difference. I know I've talked to a couple people and they weren't aware of these changes. So just as a forewarning, if I would have ran my tournament through the pre-registration, it'd have been a $1,500 difference from the previous year, and that's a lot of money. That pays for quite a few referees, pays for trainers, pays for food for the people there. So that's quite a bit of a difference. So I just want to make sure you guys know that. Check with that. There are other options out there that you can do. You can take money at the door, I guess. I mean, there's so many different options out there. So research your options before, if you are wanting to not get charged as much. They do offer the option now to charge the customer. So if your tournament's $20, it would be 22 plus the 3.15%. That would be, so your users would be charged to 25 to 20, whatever it is. That's on you to decide. I don't like it personally, but that's just my personal opinion. So just as a warning about that, make sure you guys know that going in. I know a tournament director, I was talking to did not realize that and got hit with a pretty hefty, as I said, my tournament was $1,500. He got hit pretty hard with that, and that's a pretty big surprise when you're not expecting it. As a tournament director, we have our budgets, and you put things in from the previous year and say this is going to cost this much, and then you get hit with something that's $1,000 to $2,000 difference. That's a pretty big hit. So on to my other issue, and that is the streaming. And I'll give you a little bit of a background on how I've streamed, what we have done with my tournament and as far as streaming and such. Just as a heads up, I have done pretty much every way of streaming revenue. First started off with a pay-per-view plan through FloWrestling. I believe they would get like 50% of the revenue. We started out like at $10, I believe. Early on, I got $5. FloWrestling got $5 basically, and we streamed that way. It was profitable. I mean, it was very profitable. I kept doing it. We started in 2015. As FloWrestling morphed, they did start into their Gold Plus plan where they had, 100, 200 events that were under their Gold Plus. In that plan, I would get, I believe it was something close to 90% of the pay-per-views, and then that they would get, I believe, close to 100%, if not, I might have gotten a small chunk of their Gold Plus subscriptions that were purchased during the event. So with the Gold Plus, people they had the opportunity to buy the Gold Plus account, which is a yearly thing where they got like 100 different tournaments, 100, 200 different tournaments, or I still had the option to do a pay-per-view. So people just said, hey, I don't want to pay the $100 or whatever that was at that time. I'm just going to, do a pay-per-view. I'm going to pay $10, $15, $20, whatever it was there, and go from there. After FloWrestling was acquired by FloWrestling, I was on a contract. They paid me a certain amount, and for 2021 and 2022, and that's what I got. I didn't have to worry about selling any kind of memberships or anything, so it was very nice to not have to worry about things like that. So then my contract expired. I'll get into a little bit of that little issue. And this year it was on, I think it is something semi-new. I don't know exactly what how new it is, but it's new to me, where I would make the money on the streaming based on new subscriptions. New and only new. So it would have been 30% of all new subscriptions. So if someone subscribed for a yearly subscription, which I believe is $150, I'd get about $45. If someone subscribed as a new subscriber for a monthly subscription, that's $30, so I'd get about $9. Okay. If someone subscribed in July for Fargo and watched the video, I got nothing. If someone subscribed, for the Indiana State Tournament in February for a yearly. I didn't get anything for it. Okay, if the monthly guy renews in a month, I get nothing for it. I only get it off that $30. So very not very friendly to the people who are putting in, doing the streaming. When we're doing the streaming, this is all, I won't say my equipment, someone else's equipment, but it's not FloWrestling's. It's all our setup. We're maintaining to make sure everything is up and running and doing the whole. They supply the software and the server is basically what they do. Obviously, that does cost money, so they do have costs, and they're going to need to recoup those costs. So, some things that kind of that really irked me is, number one, I'm making half as much as my worst year. My first year in 2015, they're giving me half as much as that for my event that has 200 more wrestlers, a lot more high profile than we were in 2015. Obviously, I have a lot more cost because we're not in high school anymore. There's a lot of going on with that, but I'm making half as much as I made from that first year I streamed. As I told their vice president, I was like, I can't stream for that. I will not. I mean, I can't afford to. It plain and simple. If it's gonna cost me, if I'm only gonna get that kind of revenue out of that, there's no reason to stream. That's the plain and simple of that. Which means if I'm not streaming, if I'm not making money to stream, it's gonna be very hard for a lot of tournaments to make enough money to put in that work to acquire the equipment, set up the equipment, test the equipment, and then run the equipment and troubleshoot things that are going down and stuff. So that's my biggest issue right now. Obviously, we're trying to, we have a lot of cost, and we want to make sure that we can pay people and make a certain amount of money on the event. And if if we're not going to be making the money we expect to off of streaming, that will probably be passed on to other places, unfortunately, and that will be going straight to the consumer. So a couple other little things that that piqued my that kind of, I guess not piqued, it just kind of irked me a little bit. I did get the viewership numbers from the previous 2 years, and it was very interesting to see that in 2021 we had a viewership of 21,000, just over 21,000, and in 2022 it was only just over 3,300. I fully expect a drop off from 21 to 22. We still had a little bit of COVID. People still staying home, still not sure if they can go to events, things like that. Fully expected a drop off. I mean, I would not have been surprised if it was half, to be honest. It went down by 7 times. That doesn't make sense. I don't know where they get those numbers. I cannot see any of those numbers. I have to trust that they're going to send me those numbers and say, yep, there it is. To me, that looks like they're are they making the numbers up? I don't know, but it looks like they're making them up and just sending them as a reason to not renew my contract. And to me, that's what raises a red flag. There's a lack of communication. As soon as the tournament was over, one of the email responses I had, one of their people were like, hey, it looks like your contract's up. We need to renegotiate it. I'm like, yes, sir. Let's do this. I reached out in April, very low response. It took weeks for them to respond to emails. And, personally, the only thing I want to know, are we going to renew this, or do I need to look somewhere else? And it took them until July, late July, to give me a full release from my contract. They did have the right of first refusal on the contract, which meant if I would get someone else to stream it for X amount of money, they would go back and they could go back and say, hey, nope, we will pay you that much, so you have to go with us. So I wanted to make sure I was out of that. Obviously, we know that Flow has a little bit of a reputation, so it took until July, and I was asking in April and May about getting fully released. I wanted signed. I didn't want to mess with that kind of stuff. So my viewership went down. I can't see any, I have no access to any kind of dashboard of the viewership and, and anything like that. Also, when they do tell me how much I made, I sold 30 subscriptions. You can probably do a little bit of math on that and what I made. And there's no option, there's no insights to that. They just told me 30. And they said 30 and it's this much that they attributed to my event. I have no access to a dashboard. I have no access to anything. That's just what I have to believe. You know, could there have been 10? Maybe. Could there have been 3,000? Maybe. But I will never know. The only thing I could say is I could, send out, some mass emails of, hey, if you bought a subscription during the event, tell me because I would like to know, their numbers. But there is no way to access any kind. There's no transparency whatsoever, and that's one of my biggest gripes with that is I can't see what you're telling me. And if you're telling me that's that, okay, but show me where I can see that, and I can see year over year production. I know some other events have seen significant drop offs in their viewership, and I know those people include after talking to them, they're starting to be a little bit worried that they're going to try to the next renegotiation on a contract is going to be significantly lower, and they're going to point to this. They're so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Um, Basically, to wrap kind of what my situation is. Number one, I can't stream with FloWrestling and expect the payout to be what it is. It's just not worth it. I streamed 15 mats, 1,600 matches, some very top level teams, some top level event individuals. They do have a note of what you can do to get a streaming contract. They have, I believe, 5 bullet points, and I'll show them here in just a second. So here are the bullet points of what they are wanting as far as a contract rights agreement. So 5 or more events per season, 600 wrestlers per event, 3 states represented, high quality wrestlers teams. And that is one of the things that I need, as a event, I have one event. So based on what I gather from this, it's all or nothing. So you can kind of do the math on who is eligible for this. I don't put on 5 or more events, I'm ineligible. Super 32, possibly. They only put on 1 event, they're ineligible. The Indiana State Wrestling Association, which is our USA group, they would be ineligible. They have 3 or 4, and they might have 5 events. We can argue, we can figure that out later. But they only have 1 state represented. Okay, the OAC in Ohio, which has a really good youth organization, only 1 state represented. There's lots of very big events that I don't know about. The Roller Series, New Way, I know has quite a few events, so it'll be interesting to see how that transpires and who's getting contracts and who's not. Just as a warning, I see it. I read it, and based on my experiences, I see that as an all or nothing. You have to have all 4 of those, or you're not there. I would even say something like the Ironman. They don't put on 5 events. You can kind of consider their girls and boys events 2 events, but they need 5 events. They don't have 5 events. 600, that kind of stuff. I don't even know if they have 600 wrestlers, so they might qualify. They might get disqualified by 2. So I don't know what. To me, I'm in the tournament directors I have talked to. We're trying to figure out what is their end game. What is going on here? What's their end game? And what, are they trying to really, remove a lot of their content, basically? If they don't want my content, that's fine. It is what it is. But they're going to be removing a lot of content with this, with their new standards. So just something to look at. I'll just to summarize basically. My biggest gripe, number one, is the lack of communication. They did not communicate very well with me. I tried to initiate negotiation last April, and then I asked for full release from the contract. They didn't get that to me until July. So I was stuck. And they knew it. And I'm sure they know how many people are going to register during an event. And they knew they were going to be a lot better off by me, by waiting to the last second. Very disappointed in that. I know the vice president I talked to is very disappointed in the lack of, I sent him all the emails and it has timestamps. Very disappointed in the lack of response. Anything, if if I'd have known in November last year, I would have been a lot better off. Knowing in late July, I'm screwed, and I feel totally that they just were dragging their feet just in order to make sure that they were. I didn't have any choice, and that's the thing that makes us angry. Number two, it's the work to put in and for little return, the setup, the equipment, all that kind of stuff. As I said earlier, if I'm not making money on streaming, then there's a lot of events that are going to stop streaming. And I already know of a couple that are, looking at, I know a lot of people are looking at different options, and they're looking at just, what, we might not stream. As of right now, I don't know what my streaming will be for next year. Maybe we just do one mat, throw it up on YouTube, and, go from there. I don't know, but at the same time, I can't afford to stream 15 mats for this kind of return. So I can definitely do 5 for free. I mean, why not? I'm not going to put 15 mats up there and, for peanuts. So just want to give people a little bit more details on what's going on. And if there's more updates, I will give them. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. I can answer them. I can give, if you're a tournament director and stuff, I can give you more details on what I'm going through as far as numbers and things like that. But I can just say right now, if I'm making half as much as I made my first year, that's going to be probably pretty standard. I mean, new registrations on Flow, they have the market. A lot of people are already into it. You're not going to get very many new subscriptions. I had 750 wrestlers, 9 states. Most of the people that are going to be watching already had a subscription, obviously. Even if it's from last year, if 2,500 people were watching, only 2,450 and 70 had previous subscriptions. So there's going to have to be a better way, or it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, honestly, because I know some people are going to be like, well, if I can't make money streaming, then I'm not going to do it. And that's going to, definitely anger the fans of wrestling. There's going to be less content out there. There's going to be less videos. I don't know. So just as a heads up, if you have questions, feel free to reach out. Thanks.